On this day in history, we remember the remarkable individuals who shaped our world. Welcome to Who Died Today in History, where we honor their legacies. From artists to leaders, their impact lives on. If you find their stories meaningful, like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay connected. Grace Bumbry, the groundbreaking American opera singer, passed away on May 7, 2023 at the age of 86 due to complications from a stroke. Her death marked the end of a luminous career that had reshaped the operatic world and challenged the racial boundaries of classical music. As one of the first black women to gain international acclaim on opera's grandest stages, Bumbry's passing was not merely the loss of a vocalist. It was the close of a chapter in the struggle for representation and excellence in the arts. Bumbry rose to prominence during the 1960s, an era still rife with segregation and systemic discrimination, particularly in the United States. Her debut at the Bayreuth Festival in Germany as Venus in Wagner's Tannhäuser was a seismic cultural moment. She was the first black singer to perform there, and despite public protest, her performance was met with overwhelming acclaim. In death, just as in life, Bumbry symbolized artistic excellence that transcended societal limitations. Her death from natural causes reflected a life fully lived and dedicated to breaking barriers in an often rigid cultural sphere. The immediate aftermath of her death saw tributes from major opera houses, music institutions, and cultural commentators across the globe. Her legacy as a trailblazer was emphasized, her voice having opened doors for later generations of artists of color, including Jesse Norman and Leontine Price. Though her physical presence was gone, Bumbry's impact reverberated through the very institutions that once resisted integration. Her passing did not shift global history in the traditional political sense, but it did reignite conversations about equity and inclusion in the arts. It reminded the world of how individual brilliance, coupled with courage, can redefine an entire cultural landscape. In reflecting on Bumbry's death, we are reminded that mortality often elevates those whose lives challenged conventions and championed progress. We immortalize such figures through more than just biographies and plaques. We hear them in every voice that rises unafraid on the world's great stages. Through commemorative concerts, documentary films, and educational programs bearing her name, Grace Bumbry's echo remains not only in memory, but in music itself, a testament to the enduring power of art as both expression and revolution. Tawny Kitaen, an emblem of 1980s glam culture and rock iconography, died on May 7, 2021 at the age of 59. Her death was ruled natural, linked to heart disease and the effects of various medications. While not marked by violence or dramatic spectacle, her passing spotlighted the toll of fame and the fragility of those who embodied a cultural moment often defined by excess and image. Kitaen rose to prominence as the quintessential music video vixen, most notably for her sultry, carefree dancing on the hood of a Jaguar in Whitesnake's Here I Go Again. That single image cemented her in pop culture history, encapsulating the larger-than-life aesthetics of the MTV era. But beneath the surface glamour lay personal struggles, addiction, turbulent relationships, and legal issues that mirrored the darker undercurrents of celebrity life during and after the 1980s. Her death came quietly, far from the spotlight that once adored her. Yet, it prompted a reevaluation of her legacy, not just as a muse of rock anthems, but as a woman navigating an industry notorious for discarding its stars once they faded from view. Kitaen's passing underscored the often unseen emotional and psychological cost of being turned into an icon, especially in an era that celebrated bold femininity while offering little support behind the scenes. The immediate response to her death was a mixture of nostalgia and regret. Fans and musicians reflected on her pivotal role in defining a visual era of music, while others noted how her life illustrated the human toll of living in the glare of relentless public expectation. She didn't shift the course of history in the way a monarch or revolutionary might, but her image helped shape how a generation expressed youth, rebellion, and desire. In death, Kitaen has been immortalized through countless retrospectives, music video tributes, and digital memorials. She exists now not just as a figure frozen in time on screen, but as a cautionary yet poignant reminder of how fame often outlives the individual. Her story reveals humanity's ongoing fascination with beauty, fame, and impermanence. We commemorate such figures in the media they helped shape, in her case, music videos and pop nostalgia, which allow them to transcend their mortal limitations, even as we wrestle with the very human flaws they embodied. Douglas Fairbanks Jr., a distinguished actor, naval officer, and diplomat, died of a heart attack on May 7, 2000, at the age of 90. His death marked the end of an era that bridged Hollywood glamour, wartime heroism, and international diplomacy. Though his passing was natural, it reflected the quiet departure of a man whose legacy was shaped less by controversy and more by a consistent, dignified presence in both film and public service. Born into a cinematic dynasty, his father being the swashbuckling silent film icon Douglas Fairbanks Sr., Fairbanks Jr. carved his own path. In the golden age of Hollywood, he starred in films like The Prisoner of Zenda and Gunga Din, becoming a symbol of refined masculinity and charm. But his most defining chapter came during World War II, when he served with distinction in the U.S. Navy, earning numerous honors for his role in organizing and leading deception operations across Europe. His post-war life as a diplomat and advocate for the arts further demonstrated a lifelong commitment to service beyond celebrity. Fairbanks' death at the turn of the millennium was not met with scandal or spectacle, but with reverence and respect. The world had changed dramatically since his heyday, but his image, imbued with elegance, duty, and cosmopolitanism, remained intact. His passing served as a reflective moment on a type of stardom rooted in grace and civic responsibility, qualities that seemed increasingly rare in the media-saturated 21st century. While his death did not cause political or cultural upheaval, it did amplify his legend among historians, film enthusiasts, and veterans. Fairbanks became a symbol of how entertainers could bridge art and service, glamour and grit. In this way, his life and passing quietly influenced the public's understanding of celebrity as more than spectacle. His legacy is preserved through retrospectives, documentaries, and tributes from both film institutions and military circles. Fairbanks is remembered not just for the characters he portrayed, but for the character he embodied. His death invites reflection on how we measure greatness, not in headlines, but in consistent excellence, public service, and a life lived with intention. Through timeless films and commemorations, we continue to honor Douglas Fairbanks Jr. as an exemplar of dignity, showing that mortality need not diminish impact when memory is carried with pride and purpose. Adele Mara, a Hollywood actress and singer of the 1940s and 1950s, passed away of natural causes on May 7, 2010, at the age of 87. Known for her charm and beauty, Mara's death marked the quiet passing of a performer whose career flourished during the golden age of American cinema. While not as widely remembered today as some of her contemporaries, her passing served as a reminder of the fleeting nature of fame and the changing values of the film industry over time. Born Adelaida Delgado, Mara began her career as a dancer and eventually became a contract player with Republic Pictures, a studio known for its action-packed serials and westerns. She appeared alongside stars like John Wayne in films such as Sands of Iwo Jima, 1949, contributing to the patriotic cinema of post-World War II America. Her roles often reflected the era's conventional expectations for women on screen: supportive, glamorous, and secondary to the male lead. Yet, within those boundaries, she brought warmth and charisma that gave depth to her characters. Her death in the 21st century, far removed from the heyday of her career, reflected the broader transition from the studio system's controlled star-making machinery to a digital era where fame is more fragmented and ephemeral. Unlike the tragic or sensational deaths of modern celebrities, Mara's quiet passing underscored the natural conclusion of a long life, largely out of the spotlight. There was no public spectacle, only a soft reverence from classic film enthusiasts who recognized her contribution to mid-century American cinema. While Mara's death did not shift the trajectory of history, it drew subtle attention to a vanishing generation of entertainers who helped define the visual and moral language of American film in its formative years. She was part of an industry that shaped national identity, particularly during wartime, through ideals of bravery, romance, and resilience. Today, Adele Mara is commemorated through film retrospectives and online archives where her work lives on. She is immortalized in the grainy black and white frames of westerns and noir thrillers, artifacts that preserve her legacy. Her passing invites reflection on the ways we remember performers, not just for their celebrity, but for the cultural touchstones they helped create. Through the lens of memory, even the quieter stars shine with lasting influence. Warner Baxter, an Academy Award-winning actor best remembered for his role in Old Arizona, 1928, died of pneumonia on May 7, 1951, at the age of 62. His death came following complications from a lobotomy, an invasive neurological procedure he elected in a desperate attempt to alleviate debilitating arthritis pain. Baxter's decline and death reflect a poignant intersection of fame, aging, and the limited medical understanding of his time. Baxter rose to fame during Hollywood's early sound era, becoming one of the highest-paid actors of the 1930s. He portrayed rugged yet charming heroes and later transitioned into more serious roles, including Dr. Robert Ordway in the popular Crime Doctor film series. But behind the polished image, Baxter suffered from chronic pain that worsened over time. In an era when options for managing such conditions were limited and mental health treatments often ventured into experimental territory, Baxter's decision to undergo a lobotomy was not uncommon for those at the mercy of relentless suffering. The consequences of his death were not seismic in the way that presidential assassinations or revolutionary martyrdoms might be, but his passing marked the close of a chapter in Hollywood history. Baxter represented a transitional period, bridging silent films and the golden age of talkies, where actors had to reinvent themselves amid rapidly evolving technology and public taste. His death, largely overshadowed by younger stars and changing cinematic styles, symbolized the fading relevance of early film royalty in a post-war America hungry for new icons. Yet the tragedy of his final years deepened his legacy. His story serves as a reminder of the burdens fame cannot protect one from: physical pain, aging, and the limits of human resilience. It also highlights the era's often grim approach to medical and psychiatric issues, particularly among public figures who suffered in private. Baxter is remembered today through retrospectives and film history documentaries that explore the formative years of American cinema. His name, though less recognized by modern audiences, is etched in Oscar history and classic film circles. In death, he represents the vulnerability behind the glamour and the silent struggles of those who helped build Hollywood's foundation. Through restored films, biographies, and digital archives, Warner Baxter's memory persists, an echo of a bygone era where art and suffering often walked hand in hand. Seve Ballesteros, the charismatic Spanish golfer who revolutionized European golf, died on May 7, 2011, at the age of 54, after a valiant battle with brain cancer. His death was the result of a natural illness, yet the emotional impact it had on the sporting world was profound. Ballesteros had been diagnosed with a malignant brain tumor in 2008 after collapsing at Madrid airport. Despite undergoing multiple surgeries and rounds of chemotherapy, he succumbed to the disease, leaving behind a legacy defined not only by athletic greatness, but by resilience and passion. Ballesteros rose to fame in the 1970s and 1980s, injecting flair, creativity, and emotional fire into a sport often dominated by rigid formality. At just 22, he won the Open Championship in 1979, becoming one of the youngest champions in history. He would go on to win 5 major championships and captivate audiences worldwide with his daring style of play. His death marked the end of an era in golf, especially for Europe, which he helped elevate onto the global stage through his success and leadership in the Ryder Cup. The immediate consequence of Ballesteros's death was a wave of mourning that transcended the sport itself. Golfers, sports icons, and fans across the world paid tribute. In Spain, he was not just a sporting hero, he was a symbol of national pride, breaking into a global game that had long been centered in the United States and the UK. His death amplified his legend, turning him into more than a golfer. He became a cultural icon who had bridged continents and inspired generations. Ballesteros's passing illuminated the fragility even the most spirited champions face and underscored the limitations of medical science against relentless disease. Yet it also celebrated the human capacity to inspire through adversity. His legacy endures through the Seve Ballesteros Foundation, which funds cancer research and promotes youth golf, demonstrating how memory and mortality are often transformed into enduring influence. We immortalize figures like Ballesteros, not only through trophies and statues, but through the stories we tell of grit, genius, and the human spirit. His name lives on in golf lore, sports documentaries, and emotional tributes, capturing a man who swung not only a club, but the hopes of an entire continent. Dawn Addams, the British actress known for her poised elegance and work in both Hollywood and European cinema, died of cancer on May 7, 1985, at the age of 54. Her death was natural, the result of a long illness, and occurred away from the spotlight that had once embraced her in the 1950s and 1960s. Though not a death that sent political or cultural shockwaves across nations, her passing serves as a reflection on the shifting roles and recognition of women in film and society during her era. Addams emerged during a time when post-war optimism fueled the expansion of cinema as a dominant cultural force. With appearances alongside stars like Peter Sellers and roles in films such as The Moon is Blue and The Hour of 13, she typified the poised, refined woman of mid-century screen glamour. Yet her career also mirrored the constraints placed on women in the industry, often typecast and sidelined as they aged, a fate that Addams herself seemed to confront as her film roles diminished in later decades. Her death, though not surrounded by scandal or spectacle, spoke volumes about the quiet retreat many actresses of her generation faced. In the 1980s, Hollywood was still grappling with providing meaningful roles for women past their youth, a battle that remains relevant today. The limited public response to her passing perhaps highlighted the transient nature of fame, especially for women in an industry that prized youthful beauty over enduring talent. Despite the subdued response, Addams's legacy endures in the graceful presence she brought to the screen and in her unique position as a bridge between British and American film industries. Her life also had a touch of real-life fairy tale. She married royalty, Don Vittorio Emanuele Massimo of Italy, becoming a princess, though the marriage eventually ended in separation. This blend of cinematic allure and aristocratic ties made her an icon of mid-20th century sophistication. The way we remember figures like Dawn Addams, through archived films, fan tributes, and retrospective screenings, illustrates how mortality and memory intertwine. In an era increasingly attuned to preserving and re-examining the contributions of women in cinema, Addams stands as a symbol of grace, talent, and the quiet resilience that defines so many lives lived just outside the brightest lights. Mary Filin, remembered primarily for her hauntingly beautiful performance as Christine Daae in the 1925 silent film The Phantom of the Opera, died of natural causes on May 7, 1993, at the age of 90. Living much of her later life in near reclusion in Huntington Beach, California, her quiet death stood in stark contrast to the glamour and visibility she once enjoyed during the golden era of silent cinema. Filin's passing marked the end of an era that had long since faded into history, a time when actors conveyed powerful emotion without words, relying on expressive faces and poetic gestures. Her death, while not a public spectacle, echoed the broader narrative of Hollywood's silent stars, many of whom were forgotten as technology and tastes evolved. As talkies rose in popularity in the late 1920s and early 1930s, Filin, like many of her peers, found herself marginalized. She retired from film early, her ethereal screen presence rendered obsolete not by talent, but by the industry's shifting demands, and a voice said to be unsuited for sound films. The lack of immediate public recognition upon her passing reflects a cultural tendency to overlook foundational figures as new stars rise. Yet Filin's legacy, particularly her role opposite Lon Chaney's Phantom, grew in cult status over time. Film historians and silent movie aficionados helped reintroduce her to new generations, recognizing The Phantom of the Opera as a cinematic milestone, and Filin as an essential part of its mystique. Her death invites reflection on how fame, especially for women in early Hollywood, was often fleeting and conditional. Filin's experience mirrors the silent sacrifices of many who shaped the foundation of modern film but were eclipsed by progress and innovation. Yet, the way she is remembered, through restored film prints, retrospectives, and discussions in film studies, demonstrates how time can rehabilitate and even amplify a legacy that once seemed dormant. Mary Filin's departure underscores our evolving relationship with memory and mortality. While the spotlight fades quickly in life, the art one leaves behind can cast long shadows. We immortalize such figures through restoration efforts, academic analysis, and the enduring emotional power of their performances, silent, yet speaking volumes to every generation that rediscovers them.